record. And whenever you want. I guess we already gave some.
And we're back.
We're back.
So it's time. It's June. Well, by the time you guys get this, it might be not June. It might be July.
Not June.
Or if you're listening to this far into the future, I don't know. I don't know. You could be listening to this in just a plethora of different times.
Mm-hmm. This is for your children's children.
Wow.
So that they know the top 100 games as of June 2023.
Nah. All right. That being said, we have a top 100 list, and every year we sort of go through and we do some changes. We add some things, we take some things away, but we like to do a little bit of a mid-year refresh here. And I think, Josh, neither one of us has like anything super major. We talked about some of the things that we'd like to bring to the table here. And, but yeah, I'll sort of kick us off here,
Okay.
and we both sort of like, we talked about the games that we're playing earlier. I'm playing Diablo 4. You're playing Tears of the Kingdom. Both of those are probably going to work their way onto this list in some way, shape, or form. And we don't have to do that tonight. We might want to wait until like we're finished, but I have to be honest, like, where I'm sitting right now, Diablo 4 could very easily, not could, right now, given how things are saying, like, I would just want to do a straight out swap Diablo 4 for Diablo 3.
Okay.
That may, like, it may be one of those things where as I get through, like, a little bit further in, I'm like, not so much. But
gotcha.
It's like I said, to me, it is arguably the best ARPG of all time. So
wow,
there's that.
That's quite a lot.
And it's a game. It's another game that I haven't finished, but I've been meaning to. These are I guess like the two bigger changes. But I was playing Ghost of Tsushima. I like the Far Cry, those Ubisoft style checkbox open world kind of games. And Far Cry 3 is on our list here at 59. And honestly, I'd like to see Ghost sort of just bump Far Cry 3.
Okay.
So those are like my two big ones. And I haven't, Marvel Snap is already on here. I think, I think honestly 99 for Marvel Snap is a good place.
Okay.
But then, I did mention Unpacking. I really liked Unpacking. I don't know. Like, it's one of those things that like, maybe if like we end up cutting something, we can sort of squeeze it in towards the bottom somewhere, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. As I've taken a look at just the games that I've played this past year, honestly, there's not too much that jumps out in terms of like, oh, this is definitely, one of my favorite games that I've ever played. I guess just real quick, I have played through 10 games, or no, actually, that's not true. Actually, only 9, but one of these, I just got the platinum on the Persona Dancing collection. But Etrian Odyssey 2, which I don't think is a must play. Mom Hid My Game is not a must play. Ys, the Oath in Felghana is a really good game, but again, like must play, no. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I honestly thought I would like it more. I did enjoy it. It was a fun game, but it was not the pinnacle of that style of game that I thought it was going to be. So my expectations were a bit too high. Super Metroid is already on this list. Halo 2 is on the list, and then Majora's Mask. But the other two that I'm kind of on the fence about, the first one is Taiko no Tatsujin Rhythm Festival. And really, this is more of a personal thing. I just really fell in love with the Taiko no Tatsujin in general, but I'm finding this love for the rhythm games in general. I mentioned I believe it was on a bite-sized episode, about an arcade that I went to here in town where they had this Japanese rhythm game, which was just super cool. And I'm just realizing, wow, this really, there's something about this that I just really enjoy. In addition to that, I played this game with my kids. We've been listening to the music on Spotify, these Japanese and K-pop songs that are on here. So And I've gotten my niece and my nephew into it as well. My older brother was kind of just like, What are you doing?"
What have you
As yeah,
done?
as he's like finding these games for them to play. Um, so this is a special one to me. Does it belong on the list? Maybe. It's gonna make it definitely cracks my top 100 list,
Okay.
but is it like a recommendation to absolutely everyone else? Like, no, not necessarily. Um, but I just really enjoy it. So there's that one, and then the other one that sticks out to me is Vampire Survivors.
I did play some of that. I haven't
Mm,
like I played some of the free version on
okay.
mobile.
Okay. See, the thing with this game is that the well runs deep. So there's a lot more to this game than meets the eye. It seems super simple. And in ways, it is simple, but then it gets much more complex. And the whole time you're playing this game, there's kind of a nod and a wink. It doesn't break the fourth wall, but it is very much like as you're having fun playing the game, it's having fun with you, and making kind of in jokes. So it's like it's a game for gamers. It's not something you start someone out on necessarily. Um, but yeah, there's much more than meets the eye. And so that one, like, there's just something really special about Vampire Survivors, which I understand, through Paul, that now it's spawned this entire genre. But yeah, there's something there about that game.
Hmm.
So those are really the only two that stick out to me. If you don't mind, kind of a bit of a segue with Vampire Survivors in the front of my mind is that as I've taken a look at our list, and I do have some other recommendations. We can go through those as well if we'd like to. Um, in terms of moving things around, or even just reconsidering a few other games. But one thing I've noticed as I take games to and from the list, or even my own headcanon, is that something about this list, it has to do with the way that we weigh and favor games over others. And something I tend to do that I guess I don't know that we've actually come out and said it here on the podcast, but we don't want a ton of redundancy on this list. And because
Mm.
of that, it makes me favor these smaller games that kind of do something unique and different, that are very focused. And that, like, that's pretty much all that they do. But it's not, necessarily, Tears of the Kingdom, where it's this massive thing. It's more like a small indie project. Kind of, it's easier for those types of games to make it on this list than a game that's huge, or even a game that you've seen 100 iterations of, like, say, a 2D platformer. It's more difficult to be on the list because we don't want a ton of 2D platforms on this list.
Well, I
So that
think too another area, sort of like even chaining off or sort of bouncing off that, is like games that have multiples entries
Yes.
into like I think
Hmm.
we did talk about it maybe last time, or I feel like we did have a conversation, but even with Zeldas,
Hmm.
like arguably on a top 100 list, most Zeldas could find their way onto
Right.
a top 100 list,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we we both sort of, I think, balked at that, especially in the last couple of years. We were like, I think there were more Zeldas on this list, and we ended up cutting
Yeah.
a, at least one or two of them.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, I know for a fact the original Zelda, Legend of Zelda, was on this list, and I think
Yep.
we axed that, and now we've got Tears of the Kingdom is on here, or not Tears, but Breath of the Wild is on here.
Hmm.
I think A Link to the Past
No.
and
No, it's
a
Link's
Link,
Awakening
Link.
for
Oh,
that
Link's
style.
Awakening.
Hmm.
Okay, so Link's Awakening, and then
Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. So we have a 3D,
Hmm.
we have a 2D,
Hmm.
and then basically the argument was like that Breath of the Wild is sort of like its own beast.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so but then with Final Fantasies, we've got Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 9 on here.
Yep.
And I think also Final Fantasy Tactics is on
Tactics.
here as
Yep.
well.
Hmm.
And it's like, I mean, you could make an argument that, I mean, tactics is sort of its own beast. So, okay.
Right.
But they're between Final Fantasy 6 and 9. Like, obviously, 6 is number 4. And that we both talked about that. Like, that could swap places with Chrono Trigger, depending on what we played. Like,
Yeah.
it might be like, oh, wow, I kind of like 6 more than I like Chrono Trigger right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's like we both really like. I really love 9. 9 is probably
Yeah.
like one of it is my favorite Final Fantasy, probably.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the more I think about it, like
Okay.
I like it's like one of those things where I think 6 does more for the series overall.
Mm-hmm.
Like 6 sort of, I think, is like the hard turn point. Like
Mm-hmm.
4 and 6 sort of inform almost everything else that comes after it.
Sure.
9 doesn't have that kind of impact. I just like 9 the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I've got my window open. I can smell a skunk sort of.
Oh,
It's
wonderful.
super,
The
super fun.
best.
So you have stuff like that. And we had multiple iterations of Dragon Quest games on here.
Yeah.
And so there's a ton of stuff. Like there is this thing where it's like we have to, like, we're picking and choosing and sort of cutting and kind of, and it's like, honestly, looking at it, we do have some things on here that are kind of like questionable, but even looking at some of those, I'm like, how do we cut this? I mean, obviously,
Right.
like I mentioned Far Cry 3
Mm-hmm.
and Ghost of Tsushima. Like, that is sort of a one for one kind of like, I'm taking something from that sort of genre but yeah, like, it is
Mm-hmm.
easier for, like, Katana Zero is like one of those games that we sort of have highlighted as like, I think it's a really great game,
Mm-hmm.
but is it really sort of, because that's kind of what this is. It's like, if you only play 100 games in your life, these are the games that we think you ought to play.
Yeah.
And some of them, it's because of replay value. Some of them, it's just because like that, like, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice is on here. There's a game you and I sort of talked about. It's like, that game is worth one playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
But that is a really great playthrough. Like, and once you've seen the trick, the game just sort of like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, but in it, the beautiful thing is like the way that they pull that all off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that is something impressive, and it is something that I think anybody who wants to take games seriously ought to sort of like wrestle with that game,
Yeah.
among some others on here. So that's not a game that anybody, but like, Super Mario Brothers 3, there was probably a point in my life where I played through that game like once a year.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
so I'm just like, some of the stuff, like the criteria is just so different for everything all the time. So
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And yeah, of course, there's going to be a kind of an arbitrariness to all of this because this is our list. And so therefore it's the official, top 100 best games ever. Um, so obviously there's going to be some subjectivity to this depending on our tastes as well. There's tons of classic games that didn't quite make this list. And then a few classic games that I would even argue to me feel a bit high on here as well. So yeah, you're getting our flavor of that. But I also, just want to be transparent in saying that, hey, some of these games, it's not that Katana Zero is better than A Link to the Past, which is a weird thing to say because it's like, oh, but that didn't make the well. There are other reasons for that too. We don't want certain series or certain types of games to be like dominating over everything. Because you look at the list, and obviously we both enjoy JRPGs because there are a bunch of them on this list. But
yeah,
we also didn't want the entire thing just overflowing
because
with all of them.
there is a timeline where this list is nothing but JRPGs. Like,
That exists.
that probably exists in the
Mhm.
multiverse.
No.
But yeah, no, it's I think too, like there's also like how many of these games are like games that were like, well, they're good, but I don't know if I'd play them today. Like,
Yeah.
but they're important because of the way that they informed us.
Hmm.
Like, I think that's always been like the biggest issue is like the criteria. It's like, what is the sort of like, what does it take?
Hmm.
And to get on to the backlog breakdown top 100. And it's like, well, it kind of depends.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely
You
going to
have
be,
to wow me.
yeah.
Okay, but what does that mean?
And,
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2
Hmm.
and Senua's Sacrifice, they wow us in a very different way.
Hmm.
Although I would say Senua's Hellblade is a much more enjoyable experience, like a much
Yeah.
more enjoyable might not be the right
Hmm.
word, but it's a much more satisfying gameplay
Yes.
experience
Yep. Hmm.
than Silent Hill. Silent Hill 2 is just well. But like
Yeah.
and so some of the stuff we have like XCOM, what
Hmm.
XCOM 2 is on here.
Hmm.
Why is that on here? Because I think it is the most brilliant and ruthless, uh, you know, tactics game I've ever played in my life, and it caused me no end of like pain and also delight. Like
Nice.
it's a pretty, but like I said, some of this is on here because of the way it informed us, like Mega Man 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, obviously, like Final
Hmm.
Fantasy 6. There's a whole bunch of like older stuff on here, like Mike Tyson's Punch Out,
Hmm.
Super Mario RPG. Uh, I'm just kind of like looking around here.
Hmm.
Bomberman Generation, Donkey
Yeah.
Kong 94.
Mm,
Um,
so good.
there's all sorts of like older games on here that, and I think there is kind of a part like what I would say is I think with a lot of older games too, it's like the question is does it still stand up? I
Yeah.
mean, and that's not a question that's exclusive to those. I
Hmm.
just think it's easier to ask in those sort of regards.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good.
And pick up. So, with yeah, thinking about kind of unique experiences, kind of being a little more heavily weighted with the list in general. It does. Okay, so well, we can go a couple different ways with this conversation. There's some recommendations that I have, or at least some things to consider. There are some games that I have questions about. One of which was Hellblade, but you know what? As I think about it, something special about Hellblade is that it really had it speaks to the medium of video games because
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the only way that that story could have been told. And so with that being said, I think it can keep its place. Um
For
it's just
now.
yeah, well, it's just a game that yeah, I don't necessarily want to go back to. Like you said, it's a one playthrough game.
Dude, and I think it's going to be really interesting. It's the reason I'm interested in. Excuse me, got a little bit of that. But the reason I'm interested in Hellblade 2
Hmm.
uh, is because like, can they can they do this again in a
Yeah.
way that feels convincing? And
Hmm.
because that was the thing. It's like Hellblade, whether by design or whatever, is like it's kind of like one of these games that feels very middling until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, because like it's sort of like everything snaps into place and you're like, I think this might be one of the smartest things I've ever played. Like, and that's impressive. That's
Hmm.
the trick,
Hmm.
is that they take kind of like this mediocre game and then they recontextualize it for you. And you're
Hmm.
like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And if they can do something like that again, okay. Like, I'm curious. I don't
Yeah.
think they can. Like, full disclosure, I don't think they can.
Hmm.
But I'm still kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It remains to be seen. I'm not. I mean, I'm. It's not an innocent till proven guilty thing for me. It's like I need to hear from lots of different places that it's a really good game and to hear why. because I'm not
Oh,
convinced that.
dude, you know what my sort of response is? Day one Game Pass, buddy.
Yeah,
It's a Game Pass game.
definitely. Yeah, pre-order it. Anyways, we'll yeah, whenever that does decide to come out,
Mhm.
then we'll have that conversation, maybe.
Yeah.
But until then, or at least for now, Hellblade makes it through. So I do have some other. Well, I've got a question about a game that I have not played that you really enjoy. But
Mhm.
then there are also a number of other games that I'm just kind of throwing out, making some pitches. Does it belong on the list, or where on the list does it belong? Um, so starting off with that first game that I mentioned, I've never played it, but I know you have, and you think you, at least at the time, thought very highly of it because of how high it is on the list.
Mm.
Is God of War Ragnarok. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it doesn't deserve a spot on the list. I've heard it's a good game. I've heard it's a great game. I quite enjoyed the first one, which is again why it's so high on this list. It's at number 19. Um, but Ragnarok is sitting right under it at 20. And
Mhm.
I just want to ask today, do you still think it deserves that high of a spot? Number 20 of the best games of all time.
I I really do. You know, like cuz you
Okay.
kind of asked me about this like before we started recording and we
Mhm.
kind of had a little and I've kind of been like thinking like kind of back of my head sort of been like kind of chewing a little bit on it.
Yeah.
And I really do think it does. And I think one of the things you sort of brought up was like a lot of people are sort of calling Tears of the Kingdom like basically DLC for Breath of the Wild.
Mhm.
One, anybody who actually makes that sort of like argument or whatever, it's like, dude, get wrecked. Like that's a bad line of reasoning. That's a bad take. You should feel bad.
Mhm.
Um, do I think that in the way that I said it to you is that Breath of the Wild walked so that Tears of the Kingdom from all and again, this is not coming from somebody who's played it, but you know, Breath of the Wild walked so that Tears of the Kingdom could affix a rocket to its rear end and shoot itself off into the stratosphere. Um, like Breath of the Wild is kind of like looking at Tears of the Kingdom and saying, "You were what I was supposed to be," kind of deal. And so and you even brought up to me because there's like God of War, 2018, and then or yeah, and then God of War
Mhm.
Ragnarok. There is some overlap.
Yeah.
Um, I think the biggest sort of the one thing that I would gig Ragnarok for is that I just think it's too long, and I really think it should have
Right.
been 3 games. I think that
Hmm.
it should have been God of War 2018, God of War Fimbulwinter, and God of War Ragnarok,
Hmm.
and or whatever they wanted to call the middle one. Because I think like the pacing is a little off,
Yeah.
but overall, I just thought it's a really well constructed game. It does some things that do sort of spice up the game and sort of make you go, "Oh, hey, that's really cool." Like they add some new environments and fights, and I don't know. I think probably what I said last year and what I would sort of I think maintain is that in a year and granted last year was not like this year. Last year there was a lot of like almost like slim pickings when
Mhm.
it comes to like those big AAA like sort of experiences.
Sure.
Um, but I think in a year where you don't have Elden Ring and you do have God of War Ragnarok is an easy sort of game of the year contender. Like if not game of the year. Like and again, it was a
Okay.
contender last year. So
Mhm.
it's not to say it's a perfect game, but I think it's a
Mhm.
very strong game.
Yeah.
Even in spite of its flaws. So yeah, all that being said, yeah, I think it belongs there.
At number 20.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I and I think even part of the reason that I want is because you really do need to have both of them.
Why is
Like,
that? I've only played the first one, and I feel
um,
completely satisfied, and frankly, because of the issues I've heard with pacing, I don't wanna play Ragnarok
uh,
because I don't wanna have to pour that much time into a game that's poorly paced.
well, dude, I mean, you could just play the story beats and you'd be fine. I think
Yeah.
a lot of it is turn it on to like super easy and just play story mode.
I can't do that. That's not the way that I play. I mean,
No, I
unless there's certain portions, but yeah, like,
um
that goes against my pride.
yeah, I guess it's sort of one of those things where I was just so there like I said, the pacing really was kind of like disappointing, but I
Yeah.
was so overall just pleased
Mhm.
with just the the arc for Kratos and where they ended up
Okay.
having him land and everything
Mhm.
else. And too, I think, and I got to talk about it with Logan and Micah over on TRG, and I
Yeah.
really think that there's some really like, and maybe I don't think it's on a nose, but there's some really, I think, masterful storytelling in sort of like the different parallels, and different sort of like takes on obsession and revenge and everything else, and the dangers and the ways that these things can destroy our lives. And I think like
Mhm.
I th- I think it's pretty masterful. And I know that maybe that feels like that even in spite of it, like it's like one of those things like if it didn't have some of those warts,
Mhm.
this game would be like a like I think it would have if it didn't have the pacing issues and it didn't have the whatever, it would be lauded as like the couple of other like little snags. It would be lauded as I think it would have given Elden Ring a greater run for its money
Mhm.
because the storytelling when it's there is really really potent, really powerful.
Okay.
It's just that there are some stumbles.
Okay.
So
So now this is just me being curious. When you talk about storytelling, is there anything about the game that is specific to the video game medium? Because I'm not sure that the first one did some things of, even just like the conversations in the canoes and
I
stuff like that, which
I
was
think
interesting, but it could have been done in a mini series, in a movie. It's
yeah,
largely an action movie.
yeah, I think well, there's so mm, yeah, I get where you're coming at, and I had to think about this for a few minutes,
Well,
and
and I'm just curious. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing if it's not. Like
no,
that's fine.
I don't
I'm
think
just
it's
curious.
not like Hellblade where it's like
Right.
the
Right.
gameplay actually sort of makes the thing stickier
Mhm.
and more relevant. Um, it's it's sort of one of those things where I think because you're sort of the participating, it's kind of like with like The Last of Us, the argument that I make with The Last of Us a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Like the potency is the fact that you're an active participant in
Right.
this and that's really kind of potent. That's what
Okay.
makes it stick out a little bit more and
Yeah.
makes it a little like punchier and stickier.
Yep.
Um Also like the gameplay is great. Like
Mhm.
there are some quality of life things. That, obviously there's some like I said there's some hiccups and snags and junk as well too, but it's comments and dude flinging that axe just feels awesome.
Yeah.
And then, like using the blades of chaos and basically scorpioning dudes and saying like get over here.
Mhm.
um Kratos actually did say get over here, that'd be awesome, but also probably like create some copyright problems.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but yeah, no,
Okay.
it's like the more I think about it, it's just like without its hiccups I think
Mhm.
it could have gone higher.
Okay.
It's the overall redemption and restoration of what was a pretty like just miserable and trashy character, and they made
Right.
him so
Right.
like the
Mhm.
entire series made me actually care about the future of that character. Like,
Yeah.
and so like that to me is like almost that by itself, like, I just did not care about Kratos in God of War 1, 2, and 3. I
Mhm.
thought he was kind of an irredeemable butthead.
Yes.
Um, and then 2018 came out, and I actually gave a crap about him, and, Ragnarok came out, and I was like, "Oh," like, he gets an ending that I feel is very good. I'm
Cool.
not gonna say it's, like, a happy ending.
Mhm.
It's not also it's also it's an ending that feels warranted.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to say that in, like, I'm not gonna spoil anything or that I haven't already spoiled.
Mhm.
So,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
like I
that
said, we'll
you
see
you made me
when we
think, dude.
see.
I didn't appreciate it.
Well, I mean, frankly, I didn't have too much to add to, our top 100 list because even the two that I threw out, I'm not dead set on they absolutely have to be here. But there's something to be said about, again, something like Vampire Survivors, where it does this one thing really well and it kind of envelops you because it does because of how deep it goes, it is kind of nodding and winking at you through a
You
good portion of
you
the
know what?
game.
So you mentioned Vampire Survivors,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
I'm actually looking at a game, and
Okay.
you have it highlighted here, but 88 we
Oh.
have Katana Zero, which is a great game.
Mhm.
I think you should play it,
Yes.
but the thing is, unfortunately, like, Katana Zero is, like, one of those games I absolutely love.
Mhm.
Like, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, "Oh, I wanna go back and play it again."
Yeah.
It's a really, really top shelf game, but I'm kind of like, it's one of those things, like, I'm thinking about impact.
Mhm.
Vampire Survivor is, like, I feel like put way more of a dent in sort of, like, the gaming psyche
Sure.
than I think Katana Zero. And I think like, going forward, Vampire Survivors is going to have, like, a little bit more legacy and sort of heft. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I think Katana Zero is still a great game.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure that it belongs here anymore.
Mhm. So, the only reason that it's highlighted is because I've never played it before. Like, those are the games that I've never played before
You
that are
should
highlighted
remedy
in there.
that.
I
Yeah.
agree. But right now, I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom. So, maybe in
Mm.
6 months, I can schedule out your Katana Zero. Um, that said, I mean, yeah, hey, then I'll leave that in your court whether or not you want to switch those out. But yes, I know you love Katana Zero. I mean, you talked about it multiple times about
Dude,
how it ends up being
it
a
is
puzzle.
such a cool little
Yeah,
sequencing, puzzle solving action
yeah,
thing
yeah.
that, like, now I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it is one that, yeah,
Hmm.
potentially.
So here's one for me. I'll throw this out there and see what you think. And it's funny because I have lauded this game for so long. But as I'm looking at this list, and especially because in March we did our Metroidvania March, one that sticks out to me is Rogue Legacy. Okay,
Mm,
I really enjoy this game, but I think about what it does and all of the Metroidvanias that have come out. Now, it's a roguelike, but it's a roguelike Metroidvania, and there are other games similar to this that I'm not sure that this one has aged quite as well. I still love it. I still love it. I'm not saying
mhm.
anything wrong with it, but it does seem to be well for how high it is on the list at 74. Okay, I was reading the list from the bottom up. Okay, and as you approach 74, at 79 is Bubble Bobble, Celeste, Hyper Light Drifter, Dark Souls, Xenoblade Chronicles, and then Rogue Legacy. Like something there. No. When I hit Rogue Legacy, I'm like, again, it's a game that I love. I'm not putting it down, but I'm like, dude, like Dark Souls is lower than this. Hyper Light Drifter is lower. Like, I think there's something to be said about that. Um, and maybe maybe swapping it out with another Metroidvania, maybe lowering it on the list, something like that. That's one that's kind of on the chopping block for me. Do you have any
Okay.
thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't have a major argument. I really like Rogue Legacy as well.
Yeah, we both do.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is a great game with great design, but I think
Mhm.
like it is sort of that Metroidvania roguelike kind of thing. And honestly, I haven't beaten it, but from what I understand, Dead
Mm.
Cells is sort of a better version of
Okay.
something
Okay.
comparable.
Nice.
And Dead Cells actually has a Symphony of the Night DLC.
Yeah.
So
That's right. That's right. So a couple others that I noticed as well. And again, this isn't one that I feel strongly needs to be taken off. And you mentioned earlier about how that has just impact on gaming in general. But at number 65, we have Animal Crossing New Horizons, which again just feels very high to me at 65 when you see Persona 3 underneath it. Um, the Shin Megami Tensei 4. Again, those that I just talked about earlier too, Dark Souls, Xenoblade Chronicles, stuff like that. I feel like Animal Crossing should be more in like the 80s,
I
personally.
mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not going to object to that. There is one on here that I just saw too.
Okay.
Um, where is it? I just saw it. 67 Diablo 2.
Okay.
If I'm oh, excuse me. I prefer Diablo 3 um
Okay.
to Diablo 2, and I understand that the Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 are kind of two very different games in
Hmm.
a lot of ways. But I'm like, if I'm potentially thinking about like getting rid of Diablo 3 for Diablo 4, and frankly, I think Diablo 4 is a massive improvement of like Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 are actually kind of two. They're similar and they come from the same DNA, but there's also a lot of differences. And
Hmm.
Diablo 4 is actually sort of a combination and culmination of both of them. And I'm like, frankly, that one could go. Um,
Okay.
Diablo 2 could go
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
it's like we have the superior. It's sort of like the like well, somebody put on like Mario Kart 64 at one point in time, and we're like,
Hmm.
I think we just made the argument. It's like we have the much superior version of Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna sort of hijack the nomination, and it's just gonna be Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Totally. Okay. So you would bump three. You would bump three for four, and then two for three. Is
no,
that
I
what you're
would just
saying?
get rid of
Just get
2.
rid of two.
Just
Gotcha.
open the slot.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Nice. Awesome. So another game that we played, and I'm sorry to stab you in your back, Paul. But Baldur's Gate 2, we have at
Mm,
61,
yep.
which again, I'm not saying remove it, but I'm saying that's pretty high in my mind when you have Dark Souls underneath it.
Where would you put it?
Dragon Quest 8 underneath it. Again, I'd go for like 80s, somewhere around there. I say that. I understand its merit. Again, I just didn't it I that part of my life when I could have sunk time into it and enjoyed everything that it had has long gone. So I mean, maybe even like 65.
Dude, I mean, like maybe I'm being like way meaner, but
Hmm.
I'm looking at it and like I'm looking at 90s
Okay.
and I'm like I'd put it above I'd put it in between and this is just me.
Hmm.
I'd put it in between I'd put it somewhere in the ballpark of 93, 94, 95. I
Okay.
think it should go above Silent Hill 2 because I actually enjoyed my time with Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Um, I did not like, and again, it's just like it's Silent Hill is a game where I'm like everybody should play it, but you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
Whereas
Wait till the
Baldur's
remake.
Gate, it's kind of like, well, you might have a good time, and you should probably play this.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, hmm. Yeah, that it's funny. Well, then we can give it a nice. I mean, if it's going to be in that area, then we can pop it under Hellblade at 94. That way, you know, that way still it's above Silent Hill 2. It's above Stanley Parable, which is another game that I really enjoy. I think it
No,
does a cool
it's
thing.
93.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. 93. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. A couple questions that I have. These are just games again. I don't want to get rid of them. I think they're great games, but I'm just wondering if they're too high. Um and this is as we get to the top of the list. At number 35 we have Castle Crashers. Do you think
Mm.
that deserves to be at 35 above Wind Waker? Above Control, above Breath of the Wild, but I know you're not the biggest fan. Above Journey, above RE2 remake.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I've heard it's a great
I
game. I haven't
I
played it,
do
but
love Castle
yeah.
Crashers is like one of those things where it is the culmination of the four, the multiplayer co-op beat 'em up
Hmm.
brawler kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it just I don't know. I don't know where I'd put it though. That's kind of the problem.
Do you want to put it over with Rocket League and Overwatch, where we have in those 50s in those that multiplayer kind of range?
Yeah, that actually feels like a really good spot. Like,
Cool.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that'll be what 50, I think, something like
I'd
that.
actually just throw it right underneath Rocket League, so it would become the new 52.
Okay, the new 52. Haha. But it's actually good. So that sounds good. Actually, that's 51 because of removing where it was. But
Oh yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay. Okay. So two more as we get higher up on the list. Again, it's just a question mark of does this deserve to be so high? That's all. The first one is sorry, Micah. It's Metal Gear Solid. Does it
Mm,
really deserve place 24? That's my question.
hmm.
It's a good game. It's a fun game. I think it has not aged great, but it's still fun. But is it
I
24 material?
don't know, man. I
Because it's
mean,
not for me.
it's not for me either. Like, but it's one of those things where it's like you kind of can't deny the impact that these
Hmm.
like you know what
Sure,
I'm saying? Like
sure.
I think
If that's what
maybe
we want to value.
we've said it. I think when I/we get around to playing Death Stranding,
Hmm.
at that point in time, like like if we were like Death Stranding is amazing, it changed my life. It gave then cured my cancer, kind of thing. Is that was a bad joke? Sorry. Um, that sorry that you're probably gonna have to. You probably want to edit that one out and post, Josh. Um, no, but I think it kind of like the thing is Kojima is such an auteur that
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
it's like even when his stuff isn't for me, I can just
Hmm.
recognize like the skill and the craft behind it
Hmm.
and like kind of appreciate the mind behind it. Um Metal Gear Solid has aged like a dirty diaper in my opinion. Um
Jeez, that doesn't just eight. Like
well dude,
what?
I hate that era of games. Like I mean
Yeah.
we've talked about like that early 3D polygonal stuff
Hmm.
kind of makes me a little crazy. And so I would just say, like, as much as it's sort of like I'm loath to, I just leave it alone. Leave
Okay.
it alone. Like,
Okay.
it's one that just feels like, it feels like Kojima, Kojima and his influence, it feels like we need to have one of those games on here
Hmm.
and it needs to be high. And
Okay.
it's like, is that a weird metric? Yes. Is it, but I think like overall, just like the impact that Kojima has on gaming,
Hmm.
like he kind of comes in and he's like, "Hey, watch me like." basically make this weird game about delivering parcels, and everybody plays it, and it's like, this is the most amazing thing. Like in a way, he made a video game that made people care about mail.
Mhm.
Like, which is weird, but I don't know, dude. It's just like, yeah. I think that's one where it's like, I don't have a great reason. This is more of just like a gut thing where I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, I think it just
Yeah.
needs to stay there.
Okay. Okay. Then I won't fight you too hard on it, but just know in the future I may push harder.
We can
But that's
revisit
good.
this, and we can
That's
come
good to
back
know.
and sort of like take cracks at it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Then the last one that I have is just a few places above that is, and you mentioned this game earlier, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I
Mm.
think this is a great game, but is it top 25 of all time? Great. Not to me,
Hmm.
but it is a really good game.
Yeah, I
That's
think
all I'm
it's
going to
like,
say.
I think the it's when we talk about games that are just like almost endlessly replayable. Like
Mhm.
Punch Out is that way for me, or was that way. Like, I haven't played it in years, and so I
Mhm.
probably would super suck at it
Well, sure.
because I wasn't great to begin with. Like, I don't know, but yeah, I think there's merit to saying that like it does not need to be at 22. Um,
Okay.
I just don't know where it would go.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying like it needs to be, I'm not saying it's 80s material, but even down, 10, 20 places, something like that. So that it's still in the upper half. But yeah, 22 just
um,
feels real high to me.
yeah, that
That's
feels
all.
real high. Um,
Wow. I'm surprised we agree on this. I
well,
thought I was gonna have to fight you a bit more.
I'm tired and I'm feeling generous.
Just rolling over.
You
I'm
know
giving
what?
up.
Mega Man 2 is on the list at 44.
It is.
Um,
You want to just swap those?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
That's exciting.
That's kind of funny. Yeah.
It's kind of spicy.
Exactly. That's the kind of podcast material that you tune in for. Updating spreadsheets. This is amazing.
Hmm.
And that feels good because Link's Awakening is right there, which again, I'd put Link's Awakening higher, but you know what? Mega Man 2 deserves it. And at 22, Mega Man 2, how can you get any better than that? That's perfect. Well,
That's
those were all the recommendations, changes that I had to throw out
mm,
there. Did you have any other, um, you know, anything that you wanted to switch
uh
around, change?
I don't I mean, hmm, man, I'm just kind of like looking at the list. Like I said, I don't think I have any like hard
For sure.
uh so like something that's like, and I love Destiny 2. I'm looking
Hmm.
at it at 54, and I don't think we need to move it, but I definitely think that like the more I play of it, the more I'm like, we need to have a conversation about that game because
Okay. Like you're saying it's too low.
no,
Okay.
I'm saying it might need to go down. I love it
Okay.
and
Okay.
I don't want it to. But the more I play it, the more I'm kind of like, dude, like there's just a lot of like decisions that have been made recently. And because it is sort of
Mm,
a games as a service kind of thing where
yeah.
it's like the story, like I listened to a 4-hour lore video so that I could understand the
Okay.
story of what was
Yeah.
going on with Destiny because I
Hmm.
was like, I for whatever reason am invested in this stupid game. I need to know what's going on.
Hmm.
And it just feels like recently there have been decisions made that have kind of made me go like, I don't know if I'm gonna like I'm gonna see where they land this plane because
Hmm.
the thing is like they are at the end of a sort of a creative cycle for this, and it's like I'm interested in sort of what they do with their like so to their we're approaching the final shape, which is like the closing chapters of Destiny 2.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Cool.
just like something where I'm kind of like looking at it and going like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that's such an odd thing for a games as a service thing. I mean, like, the other one that jumps out along those same lines is Overwatch. It's
Mhm.
like it's the memory of that game is very good.
Overwatch, and that's
It's
the
just
thing, is, like,
sad.
it's just freaking shameful what
Right.
Blizzard has done to that game.
Hmm.
Overwatch, like, they really, I think, like, Overwatch 2, from what I understand, has basically, like, destroyed any goodwill
Yeah.
that, like, Overwatch had,
Yeah.
which is, and it's just a shame because Overwatch was just, it was such a great game.
I'd heard
It
nothing but good things about it. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah. I mean, so
I hate competitive shooters. Hate
okay.
them. I played a mess of Overwatch.
Okay.
It's like the fact that you have a game that is so, like, charming and well designed and sort of engaging, and
Hmm.
you can get a guy who actively hates that entire gameplay loop, and he's like, "Nope, I'm in." Like, that says something. And
Yeah,
then for you
for
guys to
sure.
basically poop all over that because you're idiots.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, now granted, Blizzard did make, like, also one of my favorite games. So,
Yeah. You idiots.
you dummies.
But, um,
Um,
so another game that's jumping out at me that I don't even say we should make any changes now. Um, I will say this simply in foreshadowing of some other stuff. I want to do another bite size on this.
mm,
Is that I think the Nonary games need to be bumped up.
I need to play them, but
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't, like, I need to finish them. I started playing them and I
Okay.
started playing the first one and I
Yeah.
never got done with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's definitely, on my list, but yeah.
Those games do something very unique, and very surprising, and something that can only be done through the medium of video games.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not opposed to that. Okay, and what I'll just say is, like, you pitch a number to me and I'll tell you if I think that's too high.
oh man, I wasn't even prepared to do that, but I would say I'm taking a look at around these other ones what we've got. See, but that same area is real hot around 75. I feel like are some really good
See, that was
games.
I think last time we sort of tried to do something like this too. That was what we were running into,
Hmm.
is that 70, like, the 70s became, like, almost like, if, and again, it's been a while since we did that, but, like, it felt like the 70s became very contested territory.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, we're just like, hey, there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to kind of go in around here.
Hmm.
And it was like, yeah.
Yeah. So I would pitch it at 77 under Hyperlight Drifter above Celeste.
Yeah, I'm cool with that because I didn't like Celeste all that much. I quit that game because it
Well,
was
you know what? Then
hard and
let's just switch
stupid.
it. Well, let's switch it with Celeste.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I'm satisfied with that.
Celeste will be bumped down to 86 because I do enjoy that game quite a bit. But it's also become kind of this weird thing. I mean, anyways, it's not a big deal. Not to get all political, okay? But even the main character in that, the creator has said some stuff about it and stuff that they've kind of crammed in there. It's just
Hmm.
like, oh, really? Really? Like this can't just be a
Oh,
generic,
Celeste.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this can't just be a story about someone overcoming their fear of things. It has to be.
Well, dude, that's comparable to, like, sort of a lot of the narrative surrounding Ghost Spider in Across the Multiverse, or
Was
Across
there
the
was there
Spider-Verse.
something there that I
Well, we
missed?
can
I
talk
mean, I
about
know.
it in the bro
Yeah.
hang, but
Cool.
basically there's a lot of co-opting Gwen's
Oh, that's right.
storyline.
No, yeah, I have heard that, but that's been from fans. That hasn't been from the creators, right? I've heard
Yeah.
it's only been from fans. Yeah, right. Depends if they
Yeah,
want.
who knows?
It is June. Anyways, yeah, all
It
that's gonna
is
get cut out.
June. Yeah.
That's gonna get cut out. Um,
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
I thought that was funny. I
satisfied.
think you should leave it in. 'Cause,
Okay.
I mean, or don't. It doesn't matter.
Nice. Well, I think this has been fun.
Yeah.
Just doing a little bit of revisions here, but I
Yeah.
think also, coming back after months and then reevaluating it's good for me to kind of take another critical look at these games and also at the criteria that I'm using and why. Because it's also the criteria that I'm using for these games is also criteria of, like you said, what games ought people who are interested in games to play and why, and what can this medium do is really kind of another way as I'm getting older. Those are kind of the experiences that I'm gravitating towards, while also tapping along to Taiko no Tatsujin Japanese songs. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and there's just you play different types of games for different reasons, and
yeah,
so there's not, in a lot of ways, there isn't like a universal standard to be applied.
yeah,
And it's like, and I think even sort of like, I didn't really care for Celeste.
hmm
You loved it. I
hmm
played enough of it to know that it kind of wasn't for me,
yeah,
and but it belongs on this list, and I can, yeah, it's an interesting exercise. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. Well, before we head out for the evening, now that we've taken a look at, or the morning, I guess, now that we've taken a look at our top 100, we do have just a few short forms to fill out by the end
Hmm.
of the episode because I forgot last time. Because man, that Nar, he was getting on me. So
He's
before
uh he's a jerk.
I enjoyed my time. He could be a little abrasive. I'll put it that way. But before we sign out, the first form that we want to observe is just a shout out to the people in our community, the people who interact with us, whether a little or a lot. It means a lot to us. And
Hmm.
the shout out that I had, and this was actually again supposed to be last episode, so this is not timely at all, is for Wes. This is, like the third time we've mentioned him on this podcast, is that he had another daughter that was born into the world. And so, congratulations, sir, on your fourth child
Yeah.
being being born. That
Yeah.
was just
Welcome,
super cool.
little
Yeah.
baby Ray.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that with us as
Yeah.
well. That whole um experience.
Absolutely.
So,
Um.
super cool.
Yeah. This is not nearly as sort of impressive or whatever or momentous, but we recently had somebody join the server, and we
Mhm.
don't get a ton of new additions. But Jimicus, welcome, welcome, Jimicus. Have no
Yeah.
idea if you're listening to the podcast or not, but welcome.
Konnichiwa. Because he
Yeah.
lives in Japan.
Yeah. That's kind of
So,
wild. It's kind of wild. It's kind of
yeah,
cool.
I agree. I agree. So
So yeah.
awesome. Last form to be observed before we head out for the evening is an update on our personal challenges. Yay, our favorite part of the podcast because we get to tell you about how much how bad we stink at the things.
Fart noises.
um so last time we talked about challenges, I wanted to pare back on the entertainment that I was getting into, and in some ways I have done that. In some ways, I would say it's made me a bit more mindful. So that has been okay. It's been a little bit. I have actually recently been moving. Actually, since listening to the RC Sproul book, I've been moving some of that entertainment stuff into more of the stuff that I have in my learning library through Ligonier Ministries, because I own a ton of like digital content that I haven't
Mm.
gone through. And so that, as opposed to YouTube videos, has been nice, and it does make me more mindful. Like when I turn on YouTube videos of like, okay, do I really want to hear this? Like is this really what I want to spend my time paying
Yeah.
attention to?
Yeah. No.
So it has been a good exercise, even if it's not as impactful as I wanted it to be, if that makes sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's my update in terms of over the next couple of weeks till we talk again. Is I want to have a stricter time limit with using this little phone device here,
Mm.
and I want to set a limit to my screen time every day to be at 2 hours or less. Um, Now, I also have a tablet, and that's primarily what I watch YouTube on. So it's not like it's kind of cheating It's not, some of the things that people use their phones for, I don't typically use it for. But I know that I can doom scroll like everyone else can, and I don't want that. So phone time, I want to pare down to 2 hours a day. So
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I can't remember exactly what I said last time when I should
okay.
probably just go back and listen to
Hmm.
the end of our previous episodes. But I imagine it was probably something to do with memorization or journaling, which
Hmm.
are still things that I want to sort of hit a little
Hmm.
harder. Um, Something though that sort of within the last couple of weeks I've sort of been challenged to think about, and it might have actually come up, you know, like 2 or 3 episodes ago. I had a conversation
Hmm.
with Parker just talking about like creating some healthier routines and rhythms for me, so that I could sort of hopefully be a little more productive. And
Hmm.
I want to get to that because like I sucked. I didn't really journal the way that I wanted to, and I did a lot, but a lot of it is like sort of like just creating like healthier, more consistent routines. Like, just every night laying out my clothes for work for the next day,
Yeah.
making like running the dishwasher before I go to bed, prepping the coffee pot, checking, like doing litter, stuff like that. It's like
Hmm.
having like a little checklist at night and sort of like, okay, yeah, 9 o'clock when I'm starting to get ready for bed, make sure all this stuff is done and then go to bed. Yeah.
Hmm.
Versus just like letting things pile up and sort of, so there's that, like getting up on my days off and sort of how do I handle those, just getting up on, and so it's about sort of developing like these like sustainable routines and saying like, okay, in
Yeah.
the morning this is what we're going to do, like these we're going to bang out these 5 things and then go to work, you know at
Hmm.
night this is what we're going to do, we're going to bang out these 5 or 6 things, go to bed. And it's
Nice.
all in an attempt to sort of just foster a little bit more order in my life because it's just like I need some of that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Nice.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, sounds good, dude.
yeah.
I dig it. And if you guys want to share, even if it's just a frustration with our current top 100 list, we'd love to hear that. Well, sort of. I mean, I'd like to hear it. Sort of.
I mean,
I'd like to have a conversation
we'll
about it.
hear it
Let's do that.
and we might talk about it, but
Hmm.
it's our list.
Yeah. But if you want to laud our list and let us know how great all these games are, that I mean, I'm not against that. There are tons of ways you can get a hold of us. Our email address is thebacklogbreakdown@gmail.com. On Twitter, our handle is @bbdowncast. On Instagram, it's instagram.com/thebacklogbreakdown. On Facebook, our group is the #backlogbookclub. We also have a Discord. Link for that is in the show notes. And then if you want to get a little bit more personal on the internet, I generally go by Broccolope. And Nate goes by...
Nate_McKeever.
Yeah, you do. Good one. I like it.
Yeah, I'm fond of it myself, but it has been a night, dude. Like,
Hmm.
I think like the last couple of times we really do need to get some of this under control. Like, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a night. We have talked probably way more than I think either one of us anticipated.
Hmm.
Although it's not our longest. It's not,
No.
but it's not our shortest either. So, but that being said, we've done the things, we have filled out all our forms. It's time
Hmm.
to call it a night, buddy. So until next time, what should they do?
Guys, keep eating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.
Cool.
Beans.
Beans.
Cool, cool, cool.
Cool, 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 cool. Beans.
Beans. Cool. Beans.
Beans.
So dumb.